I can't believe I'm doing this, but here it goes. Everything in my life has felt like a slow-moving train that I thought was heading to a nice, predictable destination. But it turned out I was on the wrong track. And I only just realized it. The moment it all clicked was half an hour ago, in my parents' living room, right after I found the cruise documents. A strange clarity washed over me, and my voice came out softer than I expected as I looked at my mom, a woman I've always considered a saint. I just said, "You never asked me." And she didn't deny it. She couldn't. The silence that followed felt like a confession, the weight of a secret she'd held for years. "This isn't the first time, is it?" I continued, the realization blooming like a bruise as I thought about all those family trips I'd heard about after the fact, all the holiday gatherings scheduled when I was unfortunately working. The pattern stretched back further than I could see. Just a few weeks ago, my life was humming along in its usual rhythm. My name is Rain, I'm 27, and I'm a graphic designer in Portland. I spent most of my free time working on freelance projects to save up for a trip to Lake Tahoe, a place I'd wanted to visit for years. I was so close. Every extra design gig, every lunch I skipped, it was all for this. I'd even put a picture of a lake cabin on my desktop to keep me motivated. My family, my mom, my dad, my sister Harper, and my brother Cody, was a constant presence, calling me for help with one thing or another. It was normal. It was my normal. Dad had some health issues, and his medical bills were always a drain. Mom's car needed repairs constantly. Harper had 3 kids and always seemed to be short on cash. Cody was just Cody, and that meant he was always in some kind of trouble that needed a quick infusion of money. I was the one they always called. "Honey, we know we can count on you," my mom would say. And I'd always come through, no questions asked. I'd never had much for myself, but I always had enough for them. This time was different though. I'd been so excited about Tahoe. My parents had told me money was tight again, and that the family needed to build up a new emergency fund, so I decided to sacrifice my trip money. It was hard, but it was family. I transferred $2,800 to their account, my Lake Tahoe money. They knew I'd been saving. They knew how much it meant to me. A few days later, my dad asked me to come over and look at some files on their computer. He said he was having trouble with an old email account. I was happy to help, of course. I'd been over there for about an hour, digging through their desktop, when I stumbled upon a folder with their names on it, and a date from a few months ago. Curiosity got the better of me. Inside, I found the most beautiful full-color cruise brochure. It was for a luxury cruise to Alaska, and right next to it was a PDF of the tickets. My mom, dad, Harper, and Cody's names were all listed. I scrolled to the bottom of the page where the cost was listed and my stomach clenched. It was thousands of dollars. The trip was planned for next month. Right in the middle of a week I was supposed to be working on a huge project. A few clicks and I found their credit card statement, highlighting the exact amount, paid in full. They'd been planning this for months. I stared at the dates, a sudden cold dread washing over me. They'd been planning this while I was working extra shifts and skipping lunches to save for my own trip. And then they asked for my money. My Lake Tahoe money. Money they knew I'd been saving. Money they accepted while already holding cruise tickets with everyone's name but mine on them. When I confronted her, my mom tried to brush it off. "Honey, you're overreacting. Let's sit down." But there was no sitting down. I placed the cruise documents on the entry table. I didn't yell. I didn't slam a single door. I picked up my overnight bag, which I'd brought to stay the night, and walked out into the evening air. For the first time in 27 years, I heard my mother call my name, and I didn't turn back. I got in my car and drove away, the quiet inside the vehicle a stark contrast to the storm in my head. Back at my apartment, I sat on the floor, surrounded by photo albums and old shoeboxes of memories I dragged out from the back of my closet. I started flipping through them, and that's when I saw it. The pattern. The one I'd somehow missed my whole life. A family trip to Yellowstone I was told I couldn't go on because someone needed to water the plants. A weekend in Napa I was told I wouldn't enjoy. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "We need to talk about this misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. As if finding evidence of deliberate exclusion could be misinterpreted. I silenced my phone and opened a spreadsheet on my laptop titled, "Monthly Budget." Scrolling back through the entries, I highlighted every transfer to my parents' account. There were so many. The last one, my Tahoe money, was a transfer of $2,800. My stomach clenched as another memory surfaced. At age 7, I watched Harper practice scales with her vocal coach. I asked my mom for piano lessons and she said, "We can't afford 2 kids in music lessons, Rain. Maybe next year." Next year never came, but Cody got guitar lessons 6 months later. I thought about the college years working 3 jobs while my siblings had their rent and car insurance paid for. My mom would always say, "You're just so independent, honey. We know you can handle it." And I believed it. But now, as I looked at the old photos and the financial records, I realized that my independence was never a compliment. It was a way to justify them not having to show up for me. It was a lie I'd lived with my whole life. I picked up my phone again. It was Harper this time. "Rain, this is ridiculous. You're making Mom cry." I told her I found the cruise documents and she said, "It's not what you think. We meant to invite you, but Mom said you'd understand. You always do." The last 3 words hung between us, a weight I had carried my entire life. "Not anymore," I whispered and ended the call. After I hung up with Harper, my hands were shaking. I went to my bedroom closet and pulled out a small cardboard box from the top shelf. Inside sat a shrink-wrap jewelry-making kit, exactly like the one I had begged for on my 9th birthday. My mom said it was just too expensive before buying Harper her 3rd American Girl doll the very next week. I bought this kit for myself last year on Etsy for $35. I've kept it sealed as a reminder, though I never quite articulated what it was a reminder of until now. My phone pinged again. A text from Cody. "This is BS, Rain. We've always included you." Then another. "You're being dramatic." And finally the one that hit me hardest. "Fine, how much do you want to let this go?" I set my phone face down on the coffee table as my doorbell rang. Through the peephole I saw Melissa holding a bottle of wine and takeout bags. She's been my best friend since college, the person who's witnessed my dash to solve every family crisis for years. "I figured you might need reinforcements," she said when I opened the door. "You look like hell." I tried to sound casual. Found out my family's been deliberately excluding me from things for basically my entire life. Nothing major. Melissa stepped inside, set everything down, and pulled me into a hug that nearly broke me. "About damn time you noticed," she said, her eyes serious. "Rain, I've watched you drop everything for your family for years. Last Christmas you spent a month's salary on their gifts and got socks in return. They call you for money, babysitting, emotional support, but when was the last time they showed up for you?" The question hung in the air, unanswerable. I spent the next few days in a haze. My phone was a non-stop stream of calls and texts. My parents had deployed the flying monkeys, as my therapist, Dr. Eleanor Warren, would later call them. It started with Aunt Patricia, then Cousin Megan, then Uncle Jerry, all with the same rehearsed message. "Family disagreements happen, but you can't just disappear. You're overreacting." I added each number to my growing block list. The most surreal moment was when my dad showed up at my apartment. Through the peephole I saw him shifting from foot to foot, a paper bag clutched in his hands. We hadn't had a real conversation in years, just small talk about the weather and his blood sugar levels. Now suddenly he wanted to talk? I didn't open the door. After 15 minutes his car pulled away. Later I found the bag outside, containing my favorite childhood cookies and a card that read, "We need to talk. I miss you." The handwriting was my mom's. The manipulation was so transparent it bordered on comical. At work, an email from Harper circulated to several mutual friends. "So worried about Rain. She's been acting strange lately. Ignoring calls. We're concerned about her mental state." I forwarded it to Dr. Warren with the subject line, Exhibit C. Her response came within an hour. "This is a classic family system preservation tactic." I was beginning to understand that their concern wasn't for me, but for the system I had disrupted by finally setting a boundary. The climax of the week came when Cody appeared in our office lobby on Thursday. I slipped out the back entrance, but he was waiting for me in the parking lot, leaning against my car. "You can't avoid me forever," he said, his face wearing the same righteous look he wore as a kid when he'd blame me for something he'd done. "I'm not avoiding you. I'm refusing to see you. There's a difference." I kept my keys between my fingers just in case. "You're tearing this family apart," he said, his voice rising. "Mom barely sleeps. Dad keeps checking his phone. The kids keep asking where Aunt Rain is. A hollow laugh escaped me. I'm tearing the family apart? I didn't plan a cruise without you. That was different, he said, a flicker of shame in his eyes, quickly replaced by defensiveness. We've been planning this cruise for 8 months. The number hit me like a physical blow. 7 months. I canceled my Lake Tahoe trip exactly 7 months ago. You planned this cruise while telling me to cancel my vacation because money was tight and the family needed my savings. He had nothing to say to that. A shift occurred in his expression. You always help out, he said, a simple statement of fact, a justification. It's what you do. The parking lot around us blurred as a final clear realization washed over me. I was never really part of this family, was I? I was the backup plan, the safety net, the ATM. That's not fair, he said. No, I agree, I replied, my voice steady. It wasn't. I unlocked my car and drove home. That night, I called my cell provider and requested a number change, effective immediately. The representative asked if I was experiencing harassment. Family, I said simply. Say no more, she replied. The new number was active within the hour. The next morning, I went to the bank and closed the joint account my parents had had access to since I was in college. The balance showed 16 withdrawals in the past year, none of them made by me. I transferred the remaining balance to my personal account and requested a new card. With each boundary I set, my breathing became a little easier. My next step was to finally buy that plane ticket to Barcelona. The travel agency website glowed on my laptop screen as I entered my credit card information. For the first time in a long time, I smiled, a real smile that reached my eyes. It felt like I was reclaiming my life one small act at a time. The real work, I knew, was just beginning. It's been a week since I changed my number and closed the joint account. The invitations started to pour in. Harper's anniversary party. The family 4th of July picnic. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just busy. I was genuinely unavailable. On the RSVP cards, I simply wrote, I'm unavailable, and dropped them in the mail. My phone, with its brand new number, was quiet for a day or two. Then the calls started from numbers I didn't know. My mother, it seemed, had resorted to recruiting the extended family. Uncle Jerry left a voicemail. Rainy girl, your mother is worried sick about you. Family disagreements happen, but you can't just disappear. Call her back, sweetheart. I added his number to the growing block list. Yesterday it was Aunt Patricia. Before that, Cousin Megan. Each one reading from the same invisible script. Forgive and forget. Family comes first. You're overreacting. My dad even made another attempt. He showed up at my door again, this time with a bag of my favorite childhood cookies and a note from my mom. It was the same sad, predictable tactic. We haven't had a real conversation in years, just small talk about his blood sugar levels. But now, with their access to my finances gone, suddenly he wants to talk? I watched him through the peephole as he stood there for 20 minutes before his car pulled away. Later I found the bag, but the gesture felt hollow. It wasn't a genuine olive branch. It was a transaction. A silent offer. Take these cookies and we'll go back to the way things were. I threw them away. I was done with their quid pro quo. The situation escalated when Harper sent a mass email to several mutual friends. So worried about Rain. She's been acting strange lately. Refusing to see family. We're concerned about her mental state. It was an attempt to paint me as the unstable one, to make me seem crazy for simply setting a boundary. I forwarded it to Dr. Warren with the subject line, Exhibit C. Her response was blunt. This is called flying monkeys. Classic family system preservation tactic. I understood then that I was not just fighting my family. I was fighting an entire system designed to keep me in my place. The pressure was constant. The barrage of texts, calls, and emails was an attempt to break my resolve, to make me feel so guilty and isolated that I would come running back to the fold. The conflict came to a head when Cody appeared at my office. My coworker Tara texted me a warning, and I slipped out the back entrance, but he was waiting for me in the parking lot, leaning against my car. You can't avoid me forever, he said, his arms crossed over his chest, his face wearing the same righteous look he wore as a kid when he'd blame me for something he'd done. I'm not avoiding you. I'm refusing to see you. There's a difference. I kept my keys between my fingers, a small but significant act of self-preservation. "You're tearing this family apart," he said, his voice rising with a familiar self-righteous anger. "Mom barely sleeps. Dad keeps checking his phone. The kids keep asking where Aunt Rain is." A laugh escaped me before I could stop it. "I'm tearing the family apart? I didn't plan a cruise without you." "That was different," he said, a flicker of shame quickly replaced by defensiveness. "We've been planning this cruise for 8 months, Mom thought." 8 months, I repeated, the word hitting me like a physical blow. The clarity of that moment was devastating. "I canceled my Lake Tahoe trip exactly 8 months ago. You planned this cruise while telling me to cancel my vacation because money was tight and the family needed my savings." Something shifted in his expression. A flicker of shame quickly replaced by defensiveness. "You always help out. It's what you do." The parking lot around us blurred slightly as a final brutal realization washed over me. I was never really part of this family, was I? I was the backup plan, the safety net, the ATM. "That's not fair," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "No, I agree," I said, stepping around him to unlock my car. "It wasn't." That night, I called my cell provider and requested a number change, effective immediately. The representative asked if I was experiencing harassment. "Family," I said simply. "Say no more," she replied. The new number would be active within the hour. For the first time, I felt like my life was my own to live, and not a constant negotiation with people who only saw me as a resource. The emotional tension was at its peak, and I knew that something had to break. My old life was gone. The question was, what would take its place? It's been almost 3 weeks since I walked out on my family, and the silence from them is becoming more unsettling than the constant noise was. The calls and texts have stopped. My phone with its new number is quiet. The only contact I have with my old life is through Melissa, who is now the unofficial family messenger. "Your mom has been asking about you," she told me yesterday over coffee. "She's been trying to get you to call her. She even called me and said she was planning some kind of family emergency to lure you back." The audacity of it almost made me laugh. An emergency as a manipulative tactic. It was their love language, and it was a language I was no longer speaking. This new quiet gave me space to think. I finally had time for myself. I got to work on my portfolio, a thing I'd been putting off for years because I was always busy with a family crisis. My boss James noticed the change. "My parents played favorites too," he said one day, and I was shocked by his honesty. "It messes with your head, makes you think you're the problem." That afternoon I sat in Dr. Warren's office, my therapist of 6 months. I explained everything. "What I'm hearing," she said carefully, "is that you've discovered a pattern that's been there your whole life. This isn't normal family behavior, Rain." I had always thought I was overreacting, but she said, "You weren't. And now you have choices about how to respond." I realized that for years I had been in a state of reaction, not action. They called, I answered. They needed money, I gave it. But now, for the first time, I was the one making the decisions. I bought a round-trip ticket to Barcelona, fulfilling a promise I had made to myself. The confirmation email sat in my inbox like a monument to my newfound independence. I even started to redecorate my apartment. The walls, once rental beige, now glowed with the deep coral I've always loved but my mom called too attention-seeking. Abstract art I've chosen hangs where their family photos once dominated. I was no longer decorating my life to fit their expectations. The tension broke on a Tuesday evening. The doorbell rang. I peeked through the peephole and saw my mother standing there, her umbrella dripping, her eyes red-rimmed. For a moment my old habits took over. My hand hovered over the lock, ready to open the door and comfort her. But then I remembered. Her phone calls, her texts, her emergencies, the cruise, the jewelry kit. My hand dropped. I opened the door but blocked the entrance, keeping a safe distance between us. "Rain," her voice broke. "Thank God. We've been so worried." I just waited, saying nothing. "We're going to lose the house," she finally said, the words tumbling out between sobs. "The second mortgage. Your father's medical bills. Please help us one last time." Her hand reached for mine, a familiar gesture, expecting compliance. This was it. The ultimate moral dilemma. Do I give in and save them? Or do I stand my ground? But I had one more question for her. The question that had been eating at me for weeks. If I were the one standing here, I asked quietly, jobless? Broke? Desperate? Would you take me in? The question hung between us, the silence stretching. Mom's mouth opened, closed, and opened again, but no sound emerged. Her silence answered more honestly than words ever could. It was a brutal truth, a realization that they wouldn't have done the same for me. I nodded once, understanding completely. Then with a gentle hand I closed the door. The moment was not about me being cruel. It was about me protecting myself. I had to choose myself for the first time in my life. And that choice felt both terrifying and liberating. The confrontation was over, but the war I knew was just beginning. I could feel it building to a climax. 2 days after the terrible encounter with my mother, the hostess at Bellini's led me to a back table. My heart thudded against my ribs when I spotted them. Mom, Dad, Harper, and Cody, all seated at my favorite corner booth beneath the stained glass window. The same booth where we celebrated my college graduation. The only family celebration that was ever about me. Right on time, Mom said with a brittle smile that didn't reach her eyes. Melissa, my rock, squeezed my elbow before sliding into the booth beside me, her presence a silent declaration that I wouldn't face this alone. My father cleared his throat. We appreciate you agreeing to meet with us, Rain. His voice was formal, the kind he used for bank managers. Though you could have come alone, Harper added, glancing pointedly at Melissa. Cody leaned forward. We need to put this whole misunderstanding behind us. They all took turns speaking, their words flowing with a practiced precision I had heard my whole life. Dad reminded me how they paid for my braces and bought me a used car. Mom dabbed at invisible tears, recounting the sacrifices they'd made. Harper and Cody alternated between guilt trips and appeals to loyalty. I waited until they finished, my fingers tracing the edge of the manila folder I'd brought. Their speeches hung in the air like stale perfume. May I speak now? My voice was steadier than I expected. For pairs of eyes blinked in surprise. I had never asked for permission to speak before. I opened the folder and placed a spreadsheet on the table. This is a record of every financial contribution I've made to this family over the past decade, totaling $37,842. I tapped the final figure. That includes the $2,700 I gave you for Dad's medical bills, the same week you paid for your Alaska cruise. My mom's hand flew to her throat. That's not. I interrupted her for the first time in my life. I'm not finished. The restaurant seemed to grow quiet around us. Next, I laid down a timeline, handwritten on graph paper. Here's a record of family vacations and celebrations going back 15 years. The highlighted dates are events I was told were canceled or that I wasn't invited to. Yellow highlighter covered nearly half the page. Finally, I placed a photo on the table. And this is the jewelry-making kit I begged for when I was 9. The one that was too expensive at $30. I bought it myself last year. I keep it sealed as a reminder. My voice didn't rise, didn't crack, yet it filled the space between us, stronger than their rehearsed speeches and louder than their demands. Mom stared at the papers, her makeup-perfect face draining of color. Dad shifted in his seat. Only Cody met my eyes, his expression hardening. So what? He said. We've always done everything for you. I looked at him, then at the rest of them. Then it should be easy to name 3 things you've done for me that you didn't do for Harper or Cody. Just 3. The silence that followed stretched so long I could hear the kitchen staff calling orders. My dad opened his mouth, then closed it. Mom's face crumpled in genuine distress as the realization dawned on her. Harper's eyes widened. Cody slumped back against the booth, the fight draining from him. I don't hate any of you, I said, gathering my documents back into the folder. But I can't keep pretending. If there's ever going to be a real relationship between us, things need to change. I slid out of the booth, Melissa following. Take time to think about it. My number hasn't changed again. As we walked toward the exit, I felt lighter than I had in years. Behind us, I heard my mother's quiet sobs and my father's awkward attempts at comfort. Outside, Melissa squeezed my shoulder. You okay? She asked. I took a deep breath, surprised to find I wasn't shaking. Yeah, I said. For the first time in a long time, I think I actually am. The stars above Portland shone brighter that night, as if they too were surprised by my newfound strength. This time I had finally chosen myself, and in doing so I had found a strength I never knew I had.